Hello ladies, welcome to my blog where I am making videos to help the homemaker and create listen as you go videos that you can keep working, keep moving, and you don't have to stop and see anything. The only thing that I show you is my current teacup and maybe a few books, and then you can continue, and I love to hear your list and to read what you actually got done. It's so interesting. I know when I have some kind of background music or maybe some kind of favorite video playing in the background that I don't stop and look at, that I can work more at a better pace, and I love to have the company of it. So hopefully, I'm sitting on a very flimsy chair, and so if I have to get up and change chairs, it'll just be a longer video. So today I would like to welcome you. If you are new, I don't have comments on the video channel because I'm making these videos for my blog. I'd like you to go over there and leave a comment, and if Blogger or Google will not let you do that, please give me an email, which you can find on the sidebar. Also, my PayPal is there. And let me just tell you, I want to thank you so much for all your sweet sacrificial donations. Do you know what $3 can do? I have thought about that recently, that if someone gave you $3, would you turn it down because it wasn't big money or you weren't making big money at what you were doing? Well, you know something, if you get $3, it's better than nothing, and it will buy quite a few things, especially here in the U.S. I like to sew, and $3 will buy me a zipper, a nice big spool of thread, and maybe some trim or a package of piping or rickrack. And of course, we have our Dollar Tree where $3 will buy me 3 nice candles, scented candles, or 3 things, you know, in any kind of gift department, and that's where I get my lip conditioner. I'm wearing Wet n Wild Fuchsia with Blue Frost, and I love the name of that. And today my teacup was sent to me by a friend, and I was waiting to use this. I got this quite a while ago. It's a antique, I would say 1960s Royal Albert, and I just love it. It's got the toile, it looks like roses, cabbage roses, and I was holding on to this. I was waiting to get some fabric at Shabby Fabrics online or somewhere in town to go with this, that I could make myself a dress and show this with the dress, but I have not been able to find any. I found some that was very pale blue toile, and this sweater that I'm wearing today comes from Walmart, and it is one of those Time and True brands. I don't know if you remember years ago where people wore these warm thermal shirts under their clothes, and they were woven in such a way that they would trap the heat and keep you warm, and women started wearing them too because they were more adequate for cold climates or cold nights. And now they're making them to be fashionable, and we used to call these grandpa shirts. They had the 3 little buttons here, and they had the ribbing, and I really like this one. It's nice, has cotton in it, and I believe rayon. And so I just wanted to show you. I'm so proud of this teacup. It's so pretty, and it's in very good shape. I've checked it out, and it's just perfect. So, and then the necklace I'm wearing is an antique or vintage Avon. Some of you that used to sell Avon, some of the jewelry was quite popular in the 1990s, and this is one of the ones I got from a friend who was in Avon, and I wanted to buy something from her to help her out, and so I've kept this. And I didn't have to go to an antique store because it seems like overnight things become antiques. So even though this was bought in the 1990s, it's turned into something vintage. Also, I wanted to tell you, before you go to work, I don't intend for you to sit here and watch me because I don't really have anything going on here and not much to show you. But I wanted to show you something, and it's called Luminera. Okay, this is what it is. It's a candle. It's a candle that looks like a flame, and it's battery operated. You know, some of us don't want to have open flame in our house Goodness sakes. And it looks like it's light. See how it's moving? And when I first saw it, it was on a discount table somewhere, and I was so fascinated with it, I went and passed my hand over it because I wanted to feel the heat, but it's not. What it is, it's called Luminera, and it's run by a battery, which runs a little fan in there, which keeps that little plastic flame, and there's a light in there that keeps the plastic flame moving. But I wanted to tell you, if you ever get one, now these are quite expensive, but of course we got ours for just a few dollars because it was on a discount table. For some reason the instructions and some other things were missing out of it. So I wanted to tell you something about this. If you get one, it has a timer on it, so you have to be careful to actually get it off. If you get one, do not discard the box. The box, because that has a plastic flame, the box, you stick it back in the box, and the box has a little piece of plastic, I guess you would, that you set over this like that to protect it. If you don't, if you throw away the box, these things are difficult to store and put away, and those little plastic things will just break. And over here I have from Hobby Lobby. This is what the box looks like. From Hobby Lobby. Back here is Mirage. Now their flames do not move, but the light moves behind the flames. You must save the box also for that, because it has 3 little shapes that go over those delicate plastic flames, and it's really worth it. I've had this one for a couple of years. You wait till it's half price, and then it's very economical to have them, and I really do like them. So I wanted to show you that, and I also have a couple of book reviews. And I'm getting a little bit nervous about this chair, so I might have to change it out. So see you in a little bit. Okay, ladies, today I have a couple of book reviews for you, and I would also like to talk about 3 things. If you have something you need to do, I would really like it if you would go and do it. And the purpose of this is to have some company while you work, and hopefully you can pick up a few hints at the same time. I know there's so much. I like to watch videos on the web about homemaking, how to fix things, how to make things, and often though you have to stop. And I don't even like the live stream, because if I get involved in live stream on here and you want to talk to me, you've got to stop and leave me a note, and I've got to stop and peer over there and see what you said and answer it, and it just takes up time. So I'm not interested in doing that right now. So the first thing, we do 3 things here. We have preparation, taking care of yourself and getting ready for the day at home. And so many things whirl through my mind about that, even when I say that it's hard for me to keep going and tell you. Then the next part would be some actual homemaking and some things you might want to think about the home, and the other one would be dealing with people. And so far we've dealt with you know, how to take care of children and how to, you know, home education and things like that, but also with dealing with people who might be giving you kind of a hard time about staying home, and some of the ways you could have a little fun with it, maybe even cure them of their negativism. But first of all, with preparation and care for yourself, you know, this is what I wore today. I had an apron over it though, and I got all dressed up, and I was awfully glad that I did, because right in the middle of the morning in my homemaking, I needed some dishwasher detergent drops, and I had to run to the Dollar Tree and get them. I was so glad I didn't have to change my clothes. You see, if you'll get dressed up in the first place in something nice, you don't have to change your clothes to go somewhere else. And I know a lot of people aren't, you know, they're just showing up. often feel sorry for the people that work in these places. The things they have to look at all day, and the people coming in and acting like they don't care. I'm from the olden days when shopping was an event that you dressed up for. And people quit doing that, I think, around the 1980s. I remember even this 1960s, it kind of went downhill. And people said, oh, they weren't going to dress up for that. And now, but I think they got so busy. You know, people just got so busy they couldn't be bothered. So to dress up, I think, is good for those people that serve you in the public, and nowadays, you know, it's refreshing, and you might even get some comments, you know, from some of the employees saying that they are very glad that you came and that they like it that you always look nice. So this is something. And another thing too, I think, that is hard for ladies at home is if you're used to caring for other people and you thrive on that. You know, we learn to thrive on that, don't we? We get up in the morning and we see that our children have something to wear and something to eat, and that just keeps us so busy, and then we're always thinking ahead of something that they need, something that our husbands need. And so it's awfully hard. It's such an adjustment, isn't it, to start thinking about yourself and taking care of yourself. And a lot of women would neglect themselves in order to have the time to take care of everyone else. But really, if you neglect yourself, you really don't have consideration for other people. That's a hard concept, isn't it, to understand? But think of your own mother, how disappointed you were a time or two, maybe when she didn't care, or she didn't take care of herself, and you brought someone home, or you came home and she didn't look like she had done anything, and she didn't look like she'd combed her hair, or maybe there was some kind of family upheaval. And think of how much how our children need for us to look nice so that they have something to look up to. Now, there was a period of time when the internet first came out, and young women were going around saying they needed a mentor, and they would write to each other, and they would get on message boards and try to find older women who were into homemaking or into, you know, refined lifestyle, and try to find a mentor. But you know, that's not really necessary. And of course, when you find one, or you think you find one, you'll find that she has flaws, or maybe she's really not that committed to the home and family. So what I would suggest that you do is what some of us did when we were teenagers. We just decided we would become the mentor we wanted, so that others would have an example. So become the mentor for your children, for your home. And if you're alone and you have no one at home, at least become the mentor you want. I think that's another concept might be difficult to understand, but be the kind of mentor you would that you would want. And because, you know, these girls would make a list, you know, I want someone who looks nice and who takes care of herself and who knows how to take care of her house, and she has a beautiful home, and she goes to church, and just on and on and on. And so why not be that? Be all that you want that person to be. And then you start building up a reputation for yourself in your family. So now homemaking is, if you are coming home and you have not been raised in homemaking and you don't know where to start, it's difficult because in your life, ever since we've been real small, we've been hustled away somewhere else as soon as we woke up in the morning. And those of us that went to school and other people who went to work. So when you're home, is very difficult, because now where do I start, and how do I make use of the day and not waste a lot of time? And part of the problem is on weekends, when we weren't in school or going to work, we were just kicking back, laying around, you know, and doing just relaxing, or rushing around trying to catch up and get things all ready and cleaned up for the next week ahead. But see, now that you're home, you have to balance that all throughout each day, so that every day there's a little bit to do, and you don't work all week and then take the weekend off, and you scatter that out throughout the week. And that was why in the 1940s and 1950s women had aprons and towels, dish towels, that had the day of the week on it, and what they did. Monday was baking, and Tuesday was whatever, Wednesday was shopping, and they had so that they didn't overload themselves doing it all the time. And I'm afraid many of us try to do it all the time, but this was something that people had bred into them. Ladies had bred into them how to behave at home and how to conduct their day. And it's hard if you haven't. Now, if you have a problem, there is a book you can get called Home Comforts by Cheryl Mendelson. It's really wide, it's really big, but she had been a lawyer and she had decided to come home. I believe she might have even decided to homeschool her children, but she had said that it was much more complicated and intricate than she imagined, and she had her book divided up into all kinds of delightful chapters if you had time to read them, and it was all about how to, everything you needed to know about laundry, everything you needed to know about the kitchen, and everything you needed to know about just various things that go on in the home and how to take care of it. It's mostly a housekeeping book, but yet it also showed how to create comfort. Now, I have a copy of that somewhere. I'm in the process now of going through a 50-year collection of books, and that one hasn't shown up yet. And so I want to, when I find it, I'll show it to you, but you could probably get it off of the web somewhere, and which I recommend it if you think you need some kind of stimulant to get you interested. Home Comforts is an excellent book. It actually shows you, the difference between a good quality item that you would have in your home, whether it's sheets and pillowcases or towels, how to fold them, how to launder them, it's quite interesting actually. So now also I wanted to talk about when you are preparing yourself and getting yourself ready and keeping yourself healthy and strong and vibrant and interested and relevant even as you get older, how much rest plays in this. Now, people have ignored rest because they believe that you should just work till you crash and then get up and you're groggy and you just kind of are slow because you stayed up so late the night before. Well, the other day I had one of those days. I had woken up quite early. That was I had awakened very early for some reason, and other people have said this happens to them once in a while. And so I got a very early start in the day. I must have started at 4 o'clock. Well, by noon, of course, I was really lagging, but I didn't want to go to bed, and I didn't want to give up, and I had so much to do. But at the same time, I felt that I needed to rest, so I sat in a chair, leaned back a little bit, and closed my eyes. I must have slept a little bit, but when I got up, I felt so renewed and so refreshed. And you should never be afraid to do that. In fact, you should do it on purpose because it's so reviving and it's so renewing. And I think a lot of people look down on that, but I've known of people who have a lot of stamina, a lot of energy, a lot of interest in life, and they never get discouraged and they never get depressed. They take little tiny cat naps and they get things done. And I just think that's amazing. We don't want to take a nap. We don't want to lay down because there's so much to do. We might lose time. But if you're lagging and you're feeling very groggy and you're tired, you're not going to get anything done anyway. So you might as well put a blanket around you and sit down for a little bit and close your eyes. And you'll find when you wake up, you have a renewed spirit about it all. Now, one thing that it can do if you get a book like Home Comforts is you start looking at your house in a different way. You start looking at it like it's just a grand plaza, a place, just a wonderful place. And my goal is always to make my home so nice that I have a little cottage here, I squeeze things in, and still it's got some grandeur about it. And my goal is to do that so that I don't have a feeling that I want to go somewhere else, that it's better at home. As a matter of fact, when I do have to go out now, because I started to care more for my home, when I do have to go out, I don't like it as much. I mean, it is stimulating to go to the market and see what there is for the home. I'm always thrilled about, some new thing for the kitchen, or just, something that will aid me in. That's why I go out, look for something for the home. But there is a attention, and there's rushing around, which you don't have at home. And you can probably even serve yourself a better cup of tea at home than you can get anywhere else. But going out always makes me feel so happy to come home. And I hope that you can feel like that too. So health and rest is so important. I don't think you realize how it builds the body. It's like a vitamin. It's better than a vitamin. I want you to give it a try. And if you have small children, get them on your lap in a big chair, put a blanket over you all, and everybody close their eyes and be quiet for a little bit. It's so reviving. So education. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about Cheryl Mendelssohn's book, Home Comforts, because her education, she said, didn't count. It didn't help in her homemaking. It's a whole different learning thing that you're going to have to do at home. If you have put a lot of faith in your education, and let's say you want to homeschool your children, none of that is going to help you, because it's a whole new way of learning, and you educate yourself as you go. It's the same with the home. You teach yourself how to take care of your own home as you go, and nobody else's home is going to be exactly the same. So there really isn't. You could read a book on homemaking like Cheryl Mendelssohn's, but it still is not going to apply all to your home. But what you'll end up doing is taking care of your home the way that it works best for you and your family. And I think that's really important. There really are no rules. And I do think that it's important to have proper sanitation, to have your trash taken out, your bathroom always clean, and your kitchen sink always clean, and the laundry done. That helps increase the smell of freshness at home. Now, I want to move on. I've spoken for 23 minutes, and I want to move on to my book reviews. And so today, I get Victoria magazine. Someone gifted me with it, and it comes in the mail. And so on the inside, I kept seeing this advertisement for a book called Our Hearts Are in England. And I thought, well, that's really interesting, and I liked the pictures from inside on the bottom and everything. When I went to Hoffman Media to see how much it cost, it was over $30. So I went to a thrift book, used book place, and I forget where it was on the web, that something that was greatly discounted, and I got the book. Now I have to tell you something. The book's absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. However, it's so huge that my scrawny little wrist, it takes both hands to hold it. And if you're and it's absolutely gorgeous coffee book. If you've got a coffee table that's big enough to hold this, I don't have a coffee table. I live in a small cottage. My rooms are tiny, and this book is just huge, and it's actually very heavy. In fact, I think the postage was high, because the original price is $40, and then you have to pay postage. But the pictures and things are absolutely glorious. What I would like for Victoria Magazine to do, this is one of their publications, is put it into 3 or 4 manageable volumes that are lightweight, that would fit on my little end tables, because they put so much in here. Now, I will say that the pictures are absolutely glorious. And as I was going through this book, I thought to myself how much like my state this actually looks, and how any lady living in any state could probably make a book like this in some way. And it has like that looks like some kind of lavender growing. Well, that looks like my state. And it doesn't matter what state you're in, but we all have elements of the things that they show in these books, and they have done some very pretty interiors. Well, you could do that. You know, every one of you could make a book, and you can get on MagCloud and you can publish your own book or magazine just from your own, the pictures that you take, I believe even from your own little camera. And like, there's just a simple picture of a cup of tea and a vase and a photograph. And I'm thinking, you know, it doesn't take much because you probably have all this. Now, I've seen some of these photographs before in old Victorian magazines. They've taken some of the older older magazines and pictures and put them into. The only thing that we don't have here in the U.S. are the old buildings. We're not as ancient. I mean, our civilization is not as ancient. But I mean, it was beautiful. But like I say, it's very hard to handle. It's very big, and I do wish. And look, there's just a bunch of flowers. Now, in your country, in your state, you probably could find a picture probably take a picture like that, and you could put together a little book for your own home. And so I just want to review that a little bit for you, and it has recipes in it, explains where everything is, and it has recipes in the back for tea time, lemon and currant scones. Oh my goodness, look at this stuff. That sandwich, doesn't that look good? And it has recipes for, ooh, that sandwich looks good. Chutney chicken salad, lemon and currant scones, cucumber salmon sandwiches, orange apricot tea bread, or apricot. And then they have the elegant berry tea. And so, yes, it is an absolutely gorgeous book, and it even has a ribbon marker in here, like an old, like an old hymn book. And it is gorgeous, but like I say, it's extremely heavy. And if you want it and you've got a coffee table for it, that's the best place because people don't have to pick it up. They can just leaf through it sitting on that table. That's what I'd recommend if you get it. And I'm not saying not to get it, but I'm just saying it would have been nice if they had put this into smaller volumes and let us just buy a little stack of small books. Now I want to talk a little bit, I've got one more book for you, but it's not a gift book, or it's not a coffee table book, but I will talk to you about it later. And I want to talk to you a little bit about approaching your house when you come in as though you're a visitor. I'm sure I have done this before in previous videos, but you know, it's nice to have a current video telling you the same thing. And so what I like to do is, and I did this with my children when we were homeschooling, we would be out and we'd go for a nature walk, and then we would come back in and we would say, I wonder whose house that is, and let's go in and see what's in the inn. We called it the inn, and we would come in and have a hot chocolate or a cup of tea and just, you know, see ourselves in a different way and see the house as something different. For example, if you live in a part of the world where the winters are quite cold, that house becomes a lodge in the mountains or down by the river. And if you live somewhere where it rains a lot, this is an interesting way to listen to the rain on the roof and think of yourself as being somewhere else. And in the summer and spring, the house becomes your vacation resort, and just the fun of it, just the enjoyment of it. And I think also it's good to be in your house as much as you can because you become familiar with every corner. Now, I've noticed the parts that are the most formidable. If you've ever had and if you get to be a little older and you have started to accumulate some things, because it's almost impossible not to. I used to be really good about, you know, keeping things to a minimum and getting rid of things and everything, but then you have a period of time where things suddenly come upon you. You'll have weddings, you'll have funerals, you'll have things you need to do, trips you need to take, people that need help, and you start caring for so many other people, and pretty soon your accumulation just gets a little worse because you tend to push those things back just to make room for other people or to accommodate other people or to give yourself time to do something else. And if you have done that, then sometimes it feels difficult, doesn't it, to get, to get it all back in order. And I would suggest that you just have the main areas cleaned up, your living room, your kitchen, and your bathroom, and the bedrooms cleaned up, and then work at these other accumulations a little bit at a time. And I also think that you could also get online and you can get a homemakers or housekeepers coach. I think it's free, and one of them is called Fly Lady. You can even get people to help you on Skype. These things, though, take time. You have to stop and talk to somebody. And so with this video, if you've got something to do, something to fold, if you need to unload your dishwasher or load it, I would like you to go do that. I am going to read to you a little bit in just a minute, and I want to talk a little bit about these difficult people that say weird things to you when you've decided you want to be a homemaker. Now, it might not ever happen to you, and you might have a daughter that's homemaking that no one ever gave a hard time to at all. There are just some people that are around that, and this has gone on from the beginning of time. There are people around. I remember even back in the 1950s, people saying things to the housekeepers and the homemakers, about how they didn't have much education and that was all they could do, and kind of to run them down. And unfortunately, some of them were men saying things like that. And so there's an educational snobbery too that, I told you some people are quite snobbish about going to work at Walmart. Buying stuff at Walmart, which I do. And there's also an educational snobbery. If you don't have some kind of education that impresses someone. But let me tell you, as a homemaker, what I have noticed, especially as a homeschooler, is that even with homeschooling, even with the homeschool education and the curriculum, by the time we had finished studying it, it was obsolete. By the time we had finished studying all of our courses, that like anything, science or anything, there was more coming up that needed to be learned, and everything that we had learned was rather obsolete, couldn't be used in a job, couldn't be. So a lot of the things that people are paying for in education, in a 4-year education, by the time they finish, there was a time when everyone wanted to be a physical therapist, and so they would all go to colleges to learn this physical therapy, and when they got out, some of the jobs were not there anymore. And it's the same with other things too. It was all the rage to become something, and they would go to school to do it. Well, within the 4 years that they were going to college or going to university, their education almost became obsolete, because generally life changes, and the industry changes, and the need for jobs in other industries changes. By the time people graduate, it's a whole new world, So if anyone tries to intimidate you because they don't think that you're educated, all you have to do is tell them, it's like somebody wrote in a comment about this, you can say some things that make them laugh. Just say my education is far beyond my IQ or something like that. Or my IQ is higher than my age. And you can say some nonsensical things if you want to. Because what I find to do around people that are quarrelsome, that like to object to everything you say, and first of all, I want to stop you right now in your tracks. If you're the person that's contradicting, stop and listen to yourself in a conversation when you're talking to people and find out how often you contradict what they say so that you can better them or say something better or correct them. That is really the most uncomfortable type of conversation for anybody. I know young people do it, but they don't realize that that's what turns people cold towards them, and they wonder why, they don't seem to feel like they fit in. It could be partly because their conversation is not harmonious and smooth. And it doesn't mean you have to go along and agree with things that you just don't agree with, but there are some things that you can just let pass by without a comment. Or if you do make a comment, you could say interesting, which we have discussed as being quite a neutral word. So just correct yourself first. I know there are always going to be those in a ladies' Bible class, in a tea party, any tea parties. Tea time is still very popular around here. People like to come to tea, and it reminds me of a wives and daughters episode where Hyacinth, who had recently married Mr. Gibson, the doctor, and she had inherited a stepdaughter, and she had a daughter of her own, was confronted by Lady, I believe it was Cumnor. She said, rumors have gotten around that your daughter is running wild and not being refined and everything. And so Hyacinth was quite insulted. And when she left with Molly, her stepdaughter, she said to her, Molly, she said, these things are okay to be discussed in church or, personally between one person and another, but not with everyone sitting around the table drinking tea. So be careful about personal things that you talk about when you sit around the table drinking tea, because it's not really good to reveal anything, and you need to cut off the information if you find people always thinking they know what you should do. And sometimes you don't even ask for advice, and these people are just full of it, aren't they? Well, what you should do is this. I've known of really contented homemakers. They get in a group, and somebody will say to them, well, how are you doing? Have you been on vacation this year? And if somebody says no, they'll say, well, you probably can't afford it. Maybe you should go do this. Maybe you should go do that, and give you unwanted advice. But the person I think that is the most disturbing are the ones who contradict everything you say. That can make you go quiet pretty fast. If you say something and they say the opposite or they contradict. And children, I think it starts in childhood. Children should learn not to contradict, because it's actually arguing, and there has to be a way to speak so that they are agreeable and amiable and not disagreeable. So that's something that's worth a study. So first of all, test yourself. Are you doing it? Because you may be creating the problem. And then if you're not, pray for the disgruntled or contradictory person that is aggravating the situation in the social scene that you're in. Now, these conversations, I'll just give you an old saying, and we have discussed sayings, and one of them is, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Does anybody remember that? I'm sure you do, because our grandparents used to say that when people would try to send them off on a trail of reasoning that was way off of the original subject, in order to just argue, is they would say, well, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? And that meant you've gotten off of the subject and you don't know what you're talking about, and it doesn't have anything to do with me or you. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about tact. You have to be careful what you say to people if you're a homemaker, because there is a general prejudice against homemakers. Even if a person's mother or grandmother was a homemaker, if you're a homemaker for some reason, that really bothers people. And like I say, not all of you will experience this. Maybe nothing happened to you. Maybe no one said anything rude to you. And maybe they did and you just didn't realize it. But I'll share with you an example of what Mr. S does once in a while. And it's so, he wants, when he's very social and he goes to this thing, he runs to the Chamber of Commerce, he runs to a church singing, he runs to visit some other place, and he helps a church here and a church there, and he goes on a Bible study over here, and he runs and runs and runs. And of course, whenever possible, he wants me to accompany him, but sometimes this just starts to wear me out, and I need to stay home because I need to catch up on the laundry, so he'll have something to wear when he goes out. So I was incredibly behind because we had had some company, we'd had a church potluck, we had to go out to see someone that was far away, and within a week I had let everything slide, and it was very difficult because, of course, you get tired, you know. And so there was a church social going on in another town, and with some other people that knew us, and I said, I'm just going to have to beg off. I just can't make it. Otherwise, I'm going to be sick. You know, if you get too tired, you get too run down, you get too far behind, I am just going to have to slow down. So I'm going to have to skip this one. But give everyone my love, and just tell them I got behind, and I needed time to, you know, catch up and to get my home in order because I'm expecting more company. So what did he do? The first thing people ask is, where's your wife? How come she didn't come? He said he just tried to remember why I stayed home, and he did not do it tactfully at all, but a lot of men do this. And he said she didn't finish her work, so she couldn't come. Well, of course, that got all the tongues wagging and everyone phoning me to find out, you know, if he had just left me home and refused to take me because my work wasn't finished. But in a way, I think he kind of did it on purpose, just because it amused him so much, to make people think that I wasn't allowed to come because I didn't get my work done. But that was what he said. He said she didn't get her work finished, so she couldn't come. That's where people's minds go, you know. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you because I thought that was awfully cute and funny that he did that, because I kept wondering where are all these texts coming from, people wanting to know, you know, they get this vision of you being locked up or something if you're a homemaker. Well, you know, I reassured them, and look, I have a car and I have a debit card and I have everything I need to. If I had to run away, I would come and see you, you know. So when they start complaining or suspecting and everything, say, well, you know, if things don't work out, I could always come and live with you. And that will shut them up when they start worrying about you. So now I want to read a little bit from Sam Walton, Made in America. And the reason that Walmart was so loved in the first, I would say, 30 years was because everything in it was made in America. In fact, Sam Walton started factories in Bentonville, Arkansas, to employ Americans to make our own products from our own resources and our own raw materials that would then be packaged and sold in the Walmart stores, which is absolutely brilliant. In fact, for years I said Sam Walton ought to be president because he was quite the executive, and he really knew how to make deals, and he really knew how to keep the Americans employed, and he really had he just really knew how to balance his budget and how to keep employees happy. And so I always thought that he should run for president. And when he died, I said, well, maybe he can't run for president, but why not Walmart for president? Walmart would do a great job because they had to. Now, one of the problems is that there was a bill passed in Congress back in the 1980s, I believe, called NAFTA, which meant that many of our jobs and our products were shipped overseas and then shipped back to us, and they were made in China. So Walmart lost a lot of its popularity because they could no longer say that everything was made in America. But I'm happy to tell you that a lot of it is returning now, and I'm seeing it on the labels that some of it is made in USA now, and I'm glad to see it coming back. So he grew up working in stores that were what we would call five and dime in the olden days, and he observed what kind of business it was, and whether it was a pleasant place to work, and what the customers were like, and what the products were like, and you know, even things such as the lighting. And one of his complaints was that some of these stores he worked in fact, and he was a country boy. He said you'd have to go to the darkest recess of this old store, and you didn't have any choice because you were out in the country and it was the only place you could go, and you'd find a hammer and you'd have to dust it off and pay 10 times the price normal hammer because you're stuck there. So his idea was to have a place where people could buy a whole lot of different things in one place, and it was for the country. Unfortunately, now it's all moved to the bigger cities, and the country people don't get the Walmarts anymore. We have to go to the cities. But so I want to read a little bit from his book, Made in America. I read in some trade publication not long ago that of the top 100 discounters who were in business in 1976, 76 of them have disappeared. Many of these started with more capital and visibility than we did at Walmart, in larger cities with much greater opportunities. They were the bright stars for a moment, and then they faded. I started thinking about what really brought them down and why we kept going in spite of it. It all boils down to not taking care of their customers, not minding their stores, not having folks in their stores with good attitudes. He was talking about the employees. You know, we went to a course one time in business, and this man was kind of a motivating speaker, and he said, you know, that some of the stores were so bad back in the I believe it was late 50s, early 60s, that when you went in, you felt like you'd ruined their day because they looked like, oh no, a customer has come in. And they didn't realize that the customer was their living. And that was because they never really even tried to take care of their own people. If you want the people in the stores to take care of the customers, you have to make sure you're taking care of the people in the stores. That's the most important single ingredient of Walmart's success. Now, I know there's a Walmart, I've talked about snobbery before, like Walmart snobbery, education snobbery, and everything. Well, this will clear up some of those misconceptions. And I always wondered why, with all the bad press there has been about Walmart, their parking lots are so full you can't find a place to park. You know, if it's so bad, what's everybody doing here? You know. Most of these early guys were very egotistical people who loved to drive big Cadillacs and fly around in their jets and vacation on their yachts, and some of them lived in houses like I'd never even thought about before. I'll read more of this, I haven't checked this out to see what's on this page. Maybe I'll have to read it again, but he said that when he got very wealthy off of his own Walmart stores, someone asked him why he didn't get a Cadillac and or you know, fly somewhere instead of driving his old truck, and he said, well, where would my dogs sit? So, you know, he just wasn't his lifestyle. I remember going to dinner at one of their houses. He's talking about these bigwigs in other businesses, and we got picked up by this limousine that must have had room for 14 people. Man, they were living high, and they could afford to back then because this discounting thing was working so well. Customers just flocked to their stores, and these fellows were covered in cash. Most of them could still be around today if they had followed some basic principles about running good stores. There are a lot of ways to build strong companies. They don't have to be done the Walmart way, or my way, or anybody else's way. But you do have to work at it, and somewhere along the line, these folks stopped short of setting the goals and paying the price that needed to be paid. Maybe it wasn't the Cadillacs on the yachts. Maybe they just decided it wasn't. I've got about 5 or 10 pages of pictures to turn here. There's a lot of photographs in here. Maybe they just decided it wasn't worth it. But whatever it was, they just didn't stay close enough to their business. They sort of chose to get over on the other side of the road. They expanded quickly without building the organizations and the support, such as distribution centers, needed to expand these companies. And I told you, he made his own manufacturing companies and his own distribution centers. He got his own trucks. He got everything. He didn't have a middleman. Walmart just took care of itself. It was phenomenal. And I always loved noticing that many of their things were from their own companies. They didn't get out into their stores to see what was going on. The Kmart got their machine and gear and began to do it better and better. I remember going in their stores. I'll bet I've been in more Kmarts than anybody, so I would really envy their merchandise mix and the way they presented it. So much about their stores was superior to ours back then that sometimes I felt like we couldn't compete. Of course, that didn't stop me from trying, and Target came along and did a fine job taking the whole idea a little more upscale. As these big operators became more organized, the competition grew and became a lot more difficult. That's when all those guys who were failing to meet their customers' needs and who didn't build strong organizations, all those promoters started to fall apart and eventually fall out. That's why I always thought he should have been president, or his company should have been president, because it's an executive, you know. That's what our president is he's the executive branch, or your governor. They're supposed to take care of business. They're executives. Actually, during the whole early period, Walmart was too small and insignificant for any of the big boys to notice, and most of the promoters weren't out in our area, so we weren't competitive. That helped me get access to a lot of information about how they were doing things. I probably visited more headquarters, offices of more discounters than anybody else ever. I would just show up and say, "Hi, I'm Sam Walton from Bentonville, Arkansas. We've got a few stores out there, and I'd like to visit with Mr. So-and-so," whoever the head of the company was, about his business. And often as not, they'd let me in, maybe out of curiosity, and I'd ask lots of questions about pricing and distribution, whatever, and I learned a lot that way. So I thought you might be interested in that. I was thinking of something else I'd like to tell you about him, is that later on in the book, he talked about how he would make sure that the floors were shiny and clean, and that in the every day they would, or every week, they would move what was in the front and put something else there, and just move things around, keep the merchandise looking fresh. And also, I was young enough to have gotten there early a couple of times to Walmart to see the store managers would be giving their employees a pep talk and all kinds of awards and blue ribbons and things, because they hadn't had any accidents. And if they didn't have accidents and they didn't have to use their insurance, then they got a bonus. Also, they have a system where they get to buy shares in the store, in the business, and so they want to look after their area really well to make sure that the merchandise is not damaged and that it's not stolen, because then they get to have their bonus. And this is, you know, when you think about the home, you think about running the home that way, keeping it fresh, keeping it new, taking care of things so that you can have a bonus because you don't have to replace it because it was broken or mistreated, and caring about the people that are in the home and making sure that they're happy and relating to them, that sort of thing. It's just a big job. And like I said, if you've come home from work and you're wanting to start this homemaking, it's a whole different thing. It's not like, you can't run it like your business ran, because these are people with hearts and souls, and they have needs, you know. So, but what I learned from Sam Walton's book was somewhat amusing, and I especially liked him, the way he talked to people who were from Hollywood that wanted to include him in their circle because he was now wealthy, and he wouldn't do it because he'd have to, you know, behave a different way. And he didn't drink and he didn't smoke, and he was a country boy, and he loved retail. And so I want to read more out of that sometime when I have a little bit more time. I've already talked for 53 minutes, and I thought while I was speaking to you, I would read some of these things. And he talked about how he used to, when he first started out, he used to go driving around to see what the other stores were doing, whether their parking lots were full, and then he would compare, and if he made mistakes, he would try to figure out what he did wrong and go back and correct it and do better and learn new ways. Whereas there are some people that, whether it's in the home or a business, will not try to do that. And that's why I'm trying to tell you also about working with people who may be trying to interfere with your goals at home, to learn how to handle them. And everybody will have different people, and there might not be a certain way, but maybe you can use your personality to outwit them in some ways. And so what you want to do is make sure that people do not demoralize you and do not prevent you from doing your work. And you cannot use anyone else as an excuse. So what you have to do is, if you get someone who's difficult and they are trying to prevent you from being the homemaker that you want to do and loving your home and having a place that you can be proud of and that you can be creative in, is you just work around them. And that means you don't try to appear as though you're competing or fighting with them, but you just work around them. And I have seen many a woman who was going around beautifying her home, getting a bouquet of flowers from outside and putting it in spite of the fact that there were people that were grumpy around her. And today I think we think differently, don't we? You know, if someone's grumpy, it just kind of throws it off for us. But I think that people had more of a singleness of their heart in the olden times, and we can get that back if we have goals, and we can keep them if we do not allow adult peer pressure. And I told you about that in a previous video. Well, ladies, remember when you get up in the morning and you get your cup of tea or whatever you drink and make your list, to dedicate that list to God, to glorify Him, that your home is to glorify God in the end, and to pray for those who are difficult, because there might not be anybody else praying for them. And also to look at your home in a different way and have a fresh new spirit about it, and to be as creative as you possibly can. And do try to dress up a little bit, put a little bit of scent on if you have any, and you know, set the table, make things nice. And at first, if your family is not used to being in any way formal, they may make fun of some of the things you are doing, but after, if you're consistent with it and you do it again and again, they'll get over it. I think what happens is, if you do something, let's say you serve tea in a teacup, someone makes fun of it and you give up. But if you don't give up and you keep doing it, that will fade. They will forget that, and they will adjust. And I also think that the woman is supposed to guide and guard the home, and it's up to her. It's up to her to keep it the way that she wants it. And so I really want to encourage you to do well and to enjoy your home. It isn't all work. A lot of it is fixing it so that it is enjoyable, so that it is comfortable, and it's a place that you want to be. So ladies, if you would please leave me a comment, I'd really appreciate it. That's where I get some of my ideas. And if there's anything you'd like me to address, please put it in the comments. And I'm not sure I would know everything about it. Let me know what you liked about the books. And I have a whole stack of them over there that I'd like to read to you and read about to you, the little excerpts from them. And so thanks for your kind attention, and I hope that you got a lot done. Please leave a list of some of the things that you have done while you've listened to this. I am creating these so that if you have something tedious, something repetitive, something that you've been putting off, that you can work on. And I've got my list, and I'm hoping to finish it today. And so thanks for watching, and God bless you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.